The family relocated to Trujillo in 1971. As soon after arriving in Trujillo, Garavito was shown heterosexual pornography by a neighbor, who mocked Garavito's disgust at the pornography before beating and sexually assaulting him. In 1972, he aggressively attempted to initiate sexual relations with local women who rejected his advances. The same year, he was evicted by his mother for attempting to sodomize a 5-year-old boy, and again in 1973 after an attempted assault on a 6-year-old boy at a Bogotá train station. The boy screamed and Garavito was briefly detained. Following the latter incident, Garavito claimed he was reprimanded by his father for not choosing a woman to sexually assault instead of a young boy. As a result of their frequent fighting over his pederasty, he was evicted for the final time for homosexual behavior. Garavito started working as an assistant at a compensation fund and later in a chain of stores, and studied marketing, but he was problematic and escalated to physical altercations with clients, co-workers, and bosses. After losing his job, he worked as a street vendor who sold religious icons and as a migrant worker, developing platonic relationships with older women over the course of his adulthood. Garavito began work on a coffee plantation as a youth in Trujillo, first falling in love with a schoolteacher and single mother named Luz Mary Ocampo, with whom he later attended weekly mass services. Both of his girlfriends had children, whom Garavito reportedly nurtured as if they were his own. Garavito was physically abusive toward his girlfriends, as well as increasingly jealous, controlling, and belittling. As a result, he was often the subject of local scandals and town gossip. Garavito was frequently seen drunk and drifting from town to town as he outwore his welcome, often due to his domestic disputes with co-workers, abuse of his girlfriends, and general inability to behave normally. His erratic behavior reportedly left him unable to develop and maintain close relationships. Garavito began to feel apathy with his sex crimes. On the 4th of October 1992, he had spotted 13-year-old Juan Carlos walking near a bazaar where he had been drinking. According to Garavito, the reflection of the moonlight in the river had invoked a strange force within him, reminding him of his childhood and enraging him. He followed the child, buying synthetic rope and a butcher's knife on the way, before offering him work for 500 or 1,000 pesos. Carlos left the crowded area in Jamundi with Garavito to go to a remote area near the local railroad, where he was later found with his front teeth knocked out, severe cuts to his rectum and throat, and his genitals severed. Garavito alleged he blacked out, and wept upon discovering blood on his clothes in the morning. On 10 October 1992, Garavito ventured to Trujillo to see his sister Esther. Drinking brandy to subdue his impulses, he began breaking containers in a state of rage after seeing a child pass by, murdering 12-year-old Jean Alexander Penaranda on the way to his sister's residence while in Tuluá. He further pursued and murdered youths, collecting their amputated toes. In 1993, Garavito started cutting into his victims' bellies, luring 8 youths aged 9 to 11 from a local school to a nearby wooded lot in the La Victoria district. For fear of being traced by bloodhounds, Garavito then discarded their amputated toes before murdering Henry Giovanni Garcia, Marco Aurelio Castano, Juan David Cardenas, Jaime Orlando Popayan, and 3 more unidentified children in southeast Bogotá. He then murdered 2 additional children in the Maisen neighborhood, before departing for Tuluá, to Pereira, to Quimbaya, then to Tuluá again, where he murdered more children, ending his spree in 1993 with the death of 13-year-old Mauricio Monedero Mejia. In early 1994, Garavito lured a Bogotá youth, estimated to be about 12 years old, who had fallen asleep on the bus. After providing him with brandy, Garavito stripped and bound the child at a secluded ravine spot in a dazed state before noticing a foul odor. He then let go of the child after discovering the source of the odor was a mass grave. Immediately the child seized the knife, severing Garavito's tendons in his left hand with the weapon before ultimately being overpowered and murdered by Garavito. On 4 February 1994, Garavito lured 13-year-old Jaime Andres Gonzalez from the Plaza de Bolivar to a sugarcane field shortly after being expelled from a bar that night for complaining of their food before molesting and murdering him. Encountering a large crucifix, he entered a brief psychosis and heard a voice berating him before burying his knife and praying for forgiveness, retrieving the knife again and returning to his hotel room to chant scripture from the 57th Psalm for several hours until dawn. On 12 January 1997, Garavito murdered an 8-year-old boy before murdering an additional 2 minors during this period. The victims were almost exclusively boys, though Garavito has also been noted by local media to have molested and murdered female victims. In addition to his 172 initial charges of murder, Garavito also confessed to 28 more murders in 2003, of which 5 were adults. According to Garavito, he ordered the killings of his adult victims.